ability and intelligence? Are people born athletically gifted? Are people born musically talented? Are people born with a certain level of intellectual potential or not? That's my spine surgeon. I'll tell you a little bit about that later, but I've had several spine surgeries, and he's my superhero. But I will tell you that I've talked to him about this very question. You know, do you think you were always somebody who was bound for excellence? And he laughs at me. So I think about some of our role models. Einstein, you all have heard about the fact that his teacher thought he was subnormal. Michael Jordan's coaches told him, you know, you're really not better than other people. And I love this one the best. Walt Disney was told that he lacked creative imagination. If you've been to a Disney store, if you've been to a Disney park, if you've even seen a Disney movie, you'd probably question that. So the question then is what happened to these people, and that's where the work of Dr. Carol Dweck, who is a researcher and educator at Stanford, comes in. Dweck wrote this book called The Growth Mindset several years ago. I read it, it transformed my thinking, but I immediately thought this is a concept that we need to talk about in education, so I started talking to teachers. My background, as Jamie said, I was an English teacher, then I was a literacy specialist, then I worked in professional learning, then I became a school-based administrator, and I was an administrator in middle schools, and then I moved into the central office where I supervised all the advanced academics programs in our system. So I've had a variety of experiences, also teaching graduate and undergraduate levels at college, doing some consulting with different school districts. But when I read about growth and fixed mindset, I thought this is really one of the keys to some of the problems we're having in education, and I wanted the message to become more global. So I started talking about it, I started collaborating. I was collaborating with Mary Kay Ritchie, who wrote the book with me. She's written a couple books on growth mindset. We decided we needed to get the message out to parents, and that's why I'm here. But the whole work of Carol Dweck, her research at Stanford, is really about the quality of intelligence. And her concept is that intelligence is malleable. It's a developable quality. So she says that the mindset's all about your belief about your ability, whether that's an intellectual ability, an athletic ability, or so forth, and that belief directly affects the decisions you make related to learning. We all know this. Anybody who's ever given somebody feedback knows that your feedback is going to impact what somebody does next. Whether it's your vocal coaching, whether it's you're showing them a technique, whether it's writing something on paper. So Dweck decided that there are really two mindsets. In a fixed mindset, you believe that intelligence or ability is a fixed trait. So you're born with the amount that you get. It's probably inherently genetic, and you need to work with and develop what you have, but what you have is pretty much what you're going to get. In a growth mindset, the thinking is different, that the brain is a growth organ and that intelligence is trainable. Now, important distinction. You're not one or the other. It's a continuum, and you may be very fixed about some things and very growth about others. Can you think of anything for yourself that might be true about? I'll give you an example. I have a very growth mindset about exploring other places. I have no qualms taking my passport, and if you ask me to go on a mystery trip where somebody would hand me my itinerary at the airport and I would end up in a country I've never been to and have to make my way, I have a very growth mindset about that. I'm actually excited about it. I think I would be able to do it, not a problem. I have some friends, they wouldn't even want to go with me to a place that I know where I'm going. They're too afraid. They have a very fixed mindset about their ability to adapt in another place. My friend Karen has a fixed mindset about cooking. She's real growth about a lot of things, very fixed about cooking. She says, I can't cook, I'll never be able to cook. In fact, she bought a new house, she unplugged the oven, and she uses the stove, the oven part. You open the door, it's full of binders and notebooks for her teaching life. Because she said, I come home from school, I work at my kitchen table, why shouldn't I use that for storage? That's really fixed. Would you agree? Like, she's most of us are in the middle, but this is a really interesting graphic. When I first saw it, I was taking massive pictures of it. This comes out of Northwestern University's Talent Development Institute. And basically what it says is that a child's innate ability contributes to about 25% of future achievement. So your IQ, if your IQ makes up 25% of your potential, What do you think is this other 75%?
Environment.
Okay. What else? Just call out some ideas. Environment, school, parents, what else?
Experience.
Experiences, what else?
Nurture.
Nurture like parents but what else? What kind of qualities, other than your intellect, what kind of qualities really make a difference between somebody who is successful and achieves and somebody who doesn't?
Personality,
Okay, could be.
determination, belief,
Determination, your belief.
self-esteem.
Yeah,
Okay,
self-esteem,
okay.
confidence.
Curiosity.
Great. Well, Paula Olszewski-Kubelius, I won't make you write that down or spell it, because it's hard enough to say, but Paula Olszewski-Kubelius did this research, along with a number of graduate students at different times, and she actually has quantified what these other factors are. Here are the other factors. This is that 75%. What I'm going to point out to you is there are certain things that are not on this list, and we're really lucky they're not, because they're some of the things that we deal with a lot. There's nothing on here about your socioeconomic status. There's nothing on here about how many experiences you've been exposed to. Now, do your experiences lead to some of these things? Yes, they can. But what I've seen is that kids who've grown up in poverty have many more of these than some kids who have not. So when we're talking about grit, perseverance, resiliency, coping skills, give me a kid who's grown up in a tough situation and they are 9 times out of 10 going to be able to have those skills, where a child who has been coddled and spoiled will not have any of them. They've never had to fail at anything. So sometimes this is a wonderful thing for us as educators, because we see that we can build a lot of these things. Comfort with intellectual tension. Boy, we've had a lot of intellectual tension in our country in the last couple weeks. You know, how can you get along with people who think other things or disagree with you? You all did a simulation of intellectual tension tonight. How do you balance different ideas? How do you argue against something that you actually believe in? You know, this idea, can you handle critique and feedback, and the idea of growth mindset. Growth mindset is one of these skills that can support achievement, and we can build it. So there are a couple rules in mindset. The first one is, in a fixed mindset, it's really important to look smart. Doesn't matter whether you know the information or not, you want everyone to think you do. In a growth mindset, it's all about learning. We all know people who really need to look smart. When you have conversations with them, they're always trying to interject something that they know about the topic. Have you noticed these people? It's really sort of coming from a fixed perspective. I worked with a high school teacher when I was in a professional learning setting. He was struggling with working with his high school seniors. He was a young teacher. I went in to talk to him, and some kids asked a question, and he gave this answer, and I was sitting in the back of the room thinking, I'm not a science teacher, but I don't think that's right. So afterwards, I said to him, you know, how do you think the lesson went? And we were talking about his management of the classroom was kind of a disaster. And I said, what about that question? He's like, oh yeah, I don't know the answer to that. And I said, well, you gave an answer. And he said, oh, I know, I made it up. And I thought, oh no. I said, you can't just make, he said, well, I can't let them know. I don't know the answer, I'm the teacher. And I thought, oh boy, this guy really needs some assistance, because if there's one thing that teenagers can smell, it's somebody who doesn't know and is making it up. And he hadn't figured that out yet. So this idea that looking smart at all costs is important. Another rule of mindset, it should come naturally, and if you have to work really hard at it, it means you're not very good at it. So it means you're not very smart, you're not very talented, it doesn't really make any difference how hard you have to work. Whereas in a growth mindset, it's about effort being the most important. Effort is really the key. I have a friend who's a retired Major League Baseball player. And it's funny, because somebody said to me, well, there are a lot of people who played baseball. Was he any good? And I said, he had an $88.5 million contract. He was pretty good. And I asked him this question. Did you always know you were a better player than everyone else? And he kind of laughed and he said, oh, I didn't. He said, in fact, he was playing Little League in his little town, hometown in Pennsylvania. And he said, I was on the league all-star team. And this elderly gentleman came up to him after one of the games and clapped him on the back at about 12, 13 years old and said, Michael, you are the best player in this entire league. And he said, I tell you what, Meg, my 12-year-old self just puffed up, because you know how 12-year-old boys, they hear that, he said, I thought I was just the stuff. And he said, I went home that night, he said, I was really fortunate, my dad heard the guy say it. And he said, that night at the dinner table, he said, my dad said to me, Michael, you might be the most talented baseball player in this little town, but there is a kid like you in every town in this country, and if you really want to play ball, you're going to have to work harder than the rest of them. And he said it was a tremendous lesson for him because he saw other people who probably had the same amount of talent that he did starting out, but didn't use it. And so we're not discounting, when we talk about mindset, we're not discounting that people do have inherent talent. But sometimes people have talent they don't even know about. How many of you have never taken a really great art class? Everyone in here has taken a really great art class, and drawing, painting, sculpting. Some of you really haven't. You don't even know you have talent for that if you've never experienced it. I tell teachers this all the time. They talk about elementary kids. Well, they're not good at this, and they're not good at... Well, how do you know? Maybe they've never done it. They've never had the opportunity to try it at home. So if you give them the chance, you may see the talent that then you can cultivate. So it's true for us as well. Another rule of mindset, in a fixed mindset, you want to hide your mistakes and conceal your deficiencies. So it's better not to acknowledge the things you don't do well, whereas in a growth mindset, it's all about capitalizing on them and confronting them. Anybody ever heard of John McEnroe? Who was John McEnroe? Famous tennis player. But there's really something besides tennis that John McEnroe is known for. Temper tantrums, right? He would every time he lost a tennis match, he would throw his racket, he'd yell at the officials. They did a ton of interviews with him after his matches. And one of the things that Carol Dweck did is she went back through all of his interviews, read transcripts of all of them, and she discovered a common thread. When McEnroe lost, he blamed other things. He blamed the other person, he blamed the officials, it was too hot, it was too cold, his shorts were too tight, you name it. The man made every excuse in the book why he didn't do well. He never talked about his own performance. He never said, my backhand could have used some work, or I need to spend some more time on this, or I wasn't very well rested and I can focus on that. It was always an external reason why he wasn't doing well. And thus, the researchers have said, and the tennis greats have said, McEnroe was awesome. He could have been even better if he had had a growth mindset about his own mistakes. So, I love this quote. All animals learn, very few animals teach. We teach, whether we're coaches, whether we're mentoring students, whether we're working in a university setting, whether we're working in school classrooms, we teach. So it's really important for us to understand some basics, and I want to share with you a little bit of the basics of the neuroscience of this. This is not fuzzy science. This is not like feel good, okay, everyone thinks they can grow. There's actual science here. We used to think that the brain was like a skeleton. It was a pretty static thing. We now know that brains are more like muscles. So what you're born with is what you start, but that's not where you end up. It's all based on what you do with what you have that makes a difference. So muscles have fibers, brains have neurons. I brought my favorite neuron with me. This is Ned the neuron. They look like this. They have several parts. They're really important for people to understand, and they're really important for kids to know about these. Because if you understand how these work, you understand how you can get smarter and how you can grow new connections. So brains grow when the neurons get denser and new ones are added. And you probably have about 85 billion neurons right now. You were born with 100 billion, but you've lost some already. So sorry about that, but it's all downhill from here. But you want to keep the ones you have, and you want them to make really good connections. Because as the connections get stronger, that's how your brain gets more dense. And in the science of this, it's really fascinating. If you look at rats in a cage with no toys, and rats in a cage with toys, which ones do you think have the heavier brains? The ones with toys, because the ones who are doing stuff, their brains are growing, they're getting stronger. So the brains are more like muscles. And this whole concept of neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change and adapt. which it does. So people who've had brain injuries can learn new pathways. Kids who are born into poverty and have deficits in the brain as a result of poverty can fix up the deficits. People who can speak more than one language. Anyone in here fluent in more than one language? You all are cognitively superior to the rest of us. It's absolutely true. If you're fluent in more than one language, you are cognitively superior to the rest of us. Now, I struggle with that because I work in a school system, as you just heard, where we have lots of kids who are coming in who don't speak English and who are learning it and who might not be proficient with it. And teachers look at them and think they have a deficit. Oh, I'm sorry, you don't know English. I'm going to put you in the lower level reading and math class. When in reality, those students are cognitively superior in their learning. They need to hear your brain is more sophisticated than the person sitting next to you who only knows English. So we're going to treat you that way because we know, yes, you might need scaffolding and support, but you're actually really growing your brain. That's pretty amazing. So, is anyone in here learning something new right now? Like learning a new instrument, learning a new trade, learning a new sport, learning a new language? What are you learning?
I mean, I just started getting back into Xbox.
Oh, great. So what are you doing with it?
You mean like how am I translating
Yeah,
the
like
rest of my life?
yeah, is it, no, but I mean like, is it a certain game you're using? Is it,
Right now I'm on the NBA 2K.
okay, and is it one where you get better with more practice?
Definitely, I created like my own person, and I got like a whole season going. Right now we're on our way to the championships. Be on the lookout for that.
Okay, well, could you come up here with me for just a minute? Because
No
I want to
problem.
show something. Okay, and then I also, so your Xbox, how long have you been working on this?
2 months.
Okay, so this is what it looked like. Your connections were pretty weak the first time you started,
Yeah, definitely.
because had you taken a long break from it?
Yeah, I haven't played since I was like 14.
And then there were probably new things, right?
Definitely.
And the program was new. And so at first, this was kind of what your connection was. You were figuring it out, but your neurons were not strong for that.
Yeah, no.
Okay? Now, as you're getting better at it, your connections look more like this. And we do this in classrooms with kids. Okay? So thicker connection, it's more permanent. You might be struggling sometimes, but you're doing some hard stuff. You talked about writing some of your own stuff. I would know how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And that would only happen after 2 months.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Now, is there anything that you are really good at? I mean, so good at that you really could teach the rest of us. It doesn't have to be Xbox. What could you teach the rest of us?
I would probably say it's something dealing with mediation, because I do that a lot.
Fabulous. And there are skills to that, my friend. You have a connection like this for mediation. It's a strong connection and it's a durable connection. For most of us, we have connections like this for things like riding a bicycle. Because even if you haven't done it in a long time, if you get on a bike in about 5 minutes, you're gonna be able to ride it, right? Might not look pretty, but you know how to ride a bike. But when you first started riding a bike, you fell off, somebody had to hold you on, you probably cried, you had a couple crashes, your connections for riding a bike looked like this. With some more practice, they look like this. Today, your bike riding connection, even if it's 20 years old, looks like this. And your mediation connection looks like this. Now, your Xbox connection might get like this in another.
Yeah, another probably like 6 months. I haven't really started challenging.
You got it. There you go. Thank you. I appreciate that. So we actually use that exercise with kids to talk about how neurons change and grow. So if you want bigger muscles, you lift heavier weights. If you want to develop the brain, you have to do harder and harder work. This is where my work in advanced academics comes in. Because if it's too easy, that's not having a growth mindset. If I can tell you, oh, it's important to work hard, but then if I give you an assignment that's too easy for you, that's not going to be effective. You need to do something that's within your zone of challenge. So, we also have a problem with the way we praise people. Because we tend to give children praise about their person. We tend to say, oh, you're really smart, you're a natural player, you're the best. If you've ever stood on the sidelines of a sporting event recently and listened to some of the things that the parents say, soccer parents, basketball parents, Swim team parents, I've heard them all, and it's craziness. The things they yell at their kid. Well, I love this. Don't worry, no one in our family's good at math. Have you ever heard that? Yeah, don't worry, or I'm sorry my kid didn't do well in the math test, but none of us in our family are good at math. Like math is genetic? Is math genetic, friends? No, math's not genetic. So when we say those things, we're actually conveying the belief that the success is about a genetic trait and not anything the child has done, which really is robbing them of the truth, which is typically when they do a really good job at something, it's for one of three reasons. So there are three types of growth mindset praise, and we go over these in the book. The first one is praising effort. So you should be really proud of the hard work you put into that paper, the hard work you put into this practice, the hard work you put into this weightlifting practice, whatever. Your effort is really important. The second thing you praise is strategy. I love how you applied the strategy we taught you in class to solve the math problem. Great that you sought out a study group to help you, because that's a great strategy. You're praising the things that the person did that really made an impact. And finally, the last one is persistence praise. This is the type of praise you use when somebody doesn't give up, even though it was really hard. You're still trying. I love how you're still working hard on that. This is really important. You didn't give up, you persisted. A lot of other people might have quit, but you're not quitting, you're still trying. These are the things that really make a difference. And then this word. Most powerful word, we call it the magic word, is yet. I can't do it yet. I don't know how to do it yet. I haven't reached my goal yet. Such a powerful word. Kids will start adopting it themselves. They'll start correcting each other. You'll hear it, because kids will abide that. I actually, in many of our schools, we have the word yet on the wall in our classrooms. Some people have made it out of those letters you can get at the craft store. They're just big, Y-E-T, very simple. And the teacher doesn't even have to say anything. The teacher can just point to it when she hears the I can't language. And kids actually start checking each other the same way. And you'll hear them saying, yeah, you can't do it today, but that doesn't mean that you won't ever be able to do it. So, if we translate this into ourselves as teachers, one of the things I've tried to do is work in my system to get teachers interested in technology and utilizing technology for things. And so I decided, why didn't we take the mindset work and really think about technology? And so one of the things I'll tell you is, it doesn't matter how great you are at technology. I could take you into a classroom today, and there would be kids doing something that you've not heard of, because they just found it today, or they just heard of it today, or it's a new strategy that they're using. So we have to be really comfortable with that tension of not knowing. We're not going to be able to look smart all the time. We're going to have to go into that growth mindset learning mode, because we can't keep up with the technology. And I love this, that the ability to change is one of the least appreciated qualities of a teacher, but it is one of the most important ones. People who can change over time are worth their weight in gold. I have 12 people that directly report to me. 12 teachers directly report to me as teacher specialists, and then I have a lot of teachers and principals in schools. But those 12 people that really report to me, I have one teacher specialist who's ready to retire. She's been doing the same job for 22 years. I've been doing my job for 6. So she's worked for 6 or 7 supervisors before me. And people say to me a lot, what's it like to have somebody who's one of your right-hand people who's been in the job 22 years? Isn't she stale? I said she could be real easily, but she's not, because I'm lucky. She's a person who never wants to do the same thing twice, never wants to pull out the same professional development plan twice, always wants to learn something new, and is committed to growing. She is somebody who embraces change and actually thrives on change. So it's okay to be in the same job for 22 years, because she's never done the same job the same way twice. Really important for us to rethink what change is about, because change makes people uncomfortable. We're living in it right now. We're about to see a change in our government structure, change in our president, the transition period. People are uncomfortable with change. But there's a reality with change, which is you have to struggle through change. Can't take the easy way out of change. My uncle loves to, he has a monarch way station in his backyard. He's real into monarch butterflies, and this year he had 21 chrysalis formed in his backyard, which was huge for him, except that where he lives, Hurricane Matthew was coming through, and he said, Meg, I cannot leave my caterpillar chrysalis outside because they will all be killed by the storm. I need to bring them in. So he put them all on a screen and he brought them all into his house and he took care of them for a weekend, and then he took them out and he said out of the 21, 19 or 20 of them came out and flew away. He was thrilled. That was great odds. But here's the thing. If he would have tried to cut them out of the chrysalis or help them as they're struggling, if you've ever seen a butterfly coming out, if you try to help them when they're in that struggling period at all, they'll die. And the reason they die is because the liquids in their body that gets transferred to the wings as they're struggling is what enables them to eventually eat and then fly. And so while you could look at a struggling animal and think, oh, well, if I just, take a tweezer and pull on the chrysalis a little bit, but you really can't do that. And it's the same thing with changes. We have to struggle through them because that's part of the growth that needs to occur. The struggle is important and it's highly necessary. So transforming schools with technology, transforming teaching is a massive shift. This is actually a photograph I took in a place called Thingvellir in Iceland. Thingvellir is a unique place because it's where the tectonic plates from the Eurasian side and the North American side come together. And that's what you see there. There's a huge chasm. There's a big gap. It's like, it's extremely deep and there's very, very clear water in it. There's a lot of people like to scuba dive there. But it's a beautiful place, but it's really built of these shifts. That's what it's all about. It's constantly shifting just a little bit at a time. And when you stand in Thingvellir, you can stand on a bridge, which is where I am, where you're really standing between the two tectonic plates of the earth. And it's just like an amazing place to be. But I think about it because it's also a place of possibility. When we were talking about changes in digital teaching and high-tech learning, people were saying things like, we're in the midst of a tsunami of change. I remember hearing that and thinking, oh God, tsunami. Like that sounds like, I picture death, destruction, mud, water, stuff uprooted. Like that's a terrible image for change. We're not in a tsunami of change. That's a terrible thing. We're undergoing a shift, which can be very positive. But one of the things we have to think about is there are a lot of educators who just want to use technology to do things they've always done. For instance, I was in a high school classroom one day. Teacher was very excited to show me she was using technology. It was social studies class. I think it was government. I said, what are you doing? She said, this is great, Meg. Look at this. It was a program where you typed in words and it printed out a word search. What instructional value is a word search to a government student? The only value of a word search would be for somebody who's learning to spell words, not somebody who's learning about concepts. It was completely inappropriate, but she just thought it was cool. And I thought, well, no, we can't do that. We also have to stop automating things that we did in the 20th century. So technology is not just about taking the old ways of doing things and using technology to make them faster. It's really about changing our thinking, changing our purpose. And one of the things that I love to tell teachers is, I'm not about adding new things to your plate. I think when we add new things, we have to take them off. Any of you classroom teachers agree with me? Are your plates full? Like they're platters. It's Thanksgiving on your plate. Every day. And you know what I noticed in my years in the classroom, and my most important job will always be teacher. There was never a moment that I remember that a supervisor said to me, you know what, Meg, you can stop doing fill in the blank. It was always, here's a new thing to try, here's a new thing to do. We need to actually make a list of things we're going to stop doing. So at your table, I want you to think for a minute, what are the 20th century practices that you grew up with that are really important for teaching? So I'll throw one out to you. I think collaboration, students collaborating together and having discussions, is something we should keep from the 20th century. But there are other things from the 20th century we should probably get rid of. Like worksheets that are really pointless and just busy work, right? I did tons of them as a student. It was totally a waste of time. I could get rid of those. So I want you, with your table mates, think of one thing that you think is a 20th century practice that should stay, and one 20th century practice that we should take off our plate.
Well, that's preparation work though. Like, I feel like that's different than yeah. But like last year when I was teaching, I felt like I gave homework to do homework just to keep myself happy, not because they needed to do homework, because everything they need to do in kindergarten.
So what kinds of things would you keep? What are the keeps? Just call them out. What are the best practices that still resonate, make a lot of sense?
Electric shock.
Oh boy.
Casual debate in high school.
Okay. Debate. Yep. Universally accepted practice that really works. What are some other things that we should keep?
Integrated teaching.
Okay. Integrating contents together to make better meaning for kids. Absolutely. What about things like
Field trips. Definitely gotta keep those.
okay. Yeah, of course.
Those are good.
What about things like modeling? You know, like I do, we do, you do, you know, like that is part of the learning process. That's probably good, especially when you're learning something new. You think of other things? Connecting today's learning to something the kids already know. Connecting to experiences, right? Making it personally relevant, staying within the zone of proximal development. There are lots of things we can keep. It's not like the 20th century was a terrible time to grow up. We knew some things then, not a lot, but we knew some stuff. We were all wearing skirts, apparently, if we were female. But what kinds of things would you get rid of?
Completely teacher-led lessons.
Okay, yes. I stand and talk and nobody does anything else, yeah. Which I'm sad to say still happens in a lot of high school classrooms. The lecture format, completely disengaged, nobody's doing anything. And I'm not throwing shade at high school teachers, I love them, but that's where I see it. That's where I see it the most. What else is good? What else is gone, we should get rid of?
Standardized tests.
Standardized tests, okay? One size fits all assessment. I tend to think we've got to stop looking at all assessment as being a grade. Like, it's not good to everything be graded and it's all autopsy data. I want you to come in for a checkup. I don't want to find out that you already can't do it when you've left my room. That's a waste of time. What else should we get rid of? Did anybody do those little reading kits in a box where you just did it on your own and you just pulled out the purple passage and read it and circled the questions and then you got the blue one, and then that didn't really work. There wasn't really much efficacy. So there are things that we can take off the plate. We need to talk as educators about what doesn't work and get rid of it. So we can apply mindset to our students. I go into classrooms all the time where people have gone to my trainings, they've read books, they've developed great bulletin boards, they can talk the growth mindset, they can praise students appropriately, they challenge them, they offer hard work, but what do we feel about ourselves and our colleagues? Do we have the mindset to believe that A, all students can learn, and B, that we can learn and change? And that can be challenging because growth requires a couple things. It requires that people be open, but most importantly, it requires trust because you can't be vulnerable to explain that you don't know something if you don't trust. I work in some schools where teachers are afraid for their principal to know that they don't understand how to do a strategy, or where it's not safe to take a risk and try something new. When I observe teachers, when I did it as an administrator in a school, and when I do it now as a central office person, I always say, I'm gonna ask you 3 questions after the lesson. The 3 questions are, what did you want the students to learn? How do you know if they learned it or not? And what are you gonna do as a result? And people say, well, Meg, that's too simple. I said, nope. I will know then if you had a plan and an objective. I will know if you used assessment and if you have real-time data, whether it's formal or informal, about whether those kids knew what you were trying to communicate. And I will know what you're gonna do the next day as a result. And as a result of those 3 questions, I don't care if your lesson bombs. I've had teachers say to me, oh my gosh, Meg, this lesson was terrible. Can you come back another day? Because when I did the formative assessment, I could tell that they didn't understand what I modeled, and I'm gonna have to do this whole lesson again tomorrow. I'm so sorry, can you come another day? And that's when I say, no, this was a great lesson. Because you took a risk, what you did didn't work, but you know it didn't work, so you can retool it tomorrow. That's really what I'm looking for. But in a lot of schools, that level of risk isn't available. They don't have somebody like that. They have somebody who's gonna say, well, you tried to use Pear Deck and it didn't work. No, sometimes the technology fails. Sometimes there's a kid who acts like, you know, a crazy person in the middle of your classroom. You gotta deal with that while somebody's observing you. Those of us who spend a lot of time in classrooms, we know this is the reality, but sometimes we've gotta have that trust. I wanted to show you a video, because I brought you a treat tonight. You have to indulge me, because I love this little movie.
Wonder if I gave an Oreo to the big bad wolf, how would the story go? Would he still go huff and puff, or would he bring those pigs cool stuff to decorate the deck he helped them build? Would they not get killed? Wonder if I gave an Oreo to a vampire in a creepy show. Would he not act so undead? Would he thirst for milk instead? I've just got this feeling that it might work out alright. Does one dress things inside a chocolate sandwich dream? If I gave him the great white sharks, would he share the baby seals? Would they come and giant squid for a friendly meal? Wonder if I gave an Oreo. Wonder if I gave an Oreo. What if I gave an Oreo to you?
Okay, I'm giving you an Oreo tonight, but don't do anything with it yet.
Oh.
Okay, you're gonna be working teams on this exercise. So each team of 2 has a package of Oreos. And I don't want you to open them quite yet, but how could you change an Oreo?
Turn it inside out.
Okay, you could take it apart. What else could you do to change it? Eat the middle. What else could you do to change it?
Crush it.
Crush it. What else could you do? Break it in half, take a bite out of it, right? All these things would change the Oreo. However, I'm not asking you to change an Oreo tonight. I'm asking you to transform the purpose of an Oreo. The purpose of an Oreo, as reflected in that video, is to make people happy, right? It's a snack. You're probably hungry at this time of night, so that's a good thing, and you can eat your Oreo after you transform it, but those are the regular purposes of an Oreo. I want you and your partner to take the Oreos in your package, and I want you to make something out of them that transforms the purpose of that Oreo. So it cannot be a snack or a food. It has to do something else. So go. You have about 3 minutes to transform an Oreo into something else. New purpose.
Allergic to the Oreo. Use it as a or
You
as a
can't eat them
platform.
until you share with us what your transformation is. So you have to actually definitely do it.
Oh, you want to make
Art.
You can make it.
I know. I'm not very creative.
Again, exercise science major, I'm very confused.
Anybody have their hands?
A treaty, a gift, an offering.
That's what it is.
So we can just, yeah, well, we can go give it to someone.
Anybody afraid to touch their Oreos because their hands are germy?
I've been touching weights all day, actually.
Here.
Yeah. I'm gonna give someone the plague. Thanks.
It's the best stuff ever. Anybody else? It's not. It doesn't have any weird stuff in it. It's just alcohol.
Right, her Oreo.
Anybody not gonna touch their Oreo because their hands are germy? Oh, you guys are all. You're diving in. Good. Anybody else? Okay. Aren't I crazy to carry this around with me? Has to have a new purpose.
Or you can like put right on this side and then like. I don't understand You just have to make an Oreo to
These are
different.
social studies teachers and everything black and white. This happened on this date. This is what it says.
Oreo was invented. Let me Google it.
I think I'm gonna use mine as a map. Since it's already broken apart, like, you need all the pieces to actually connect.
The jigsaw.
Yeah.
I could clip mine. We got heads is the crack side, tails is the side side.
Oh,
Not really
smart.
stupid. Mine just looks like an Oreo cookie. I guess I don't
Well, that's when I grow my side.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody ready to share? You have about 10 seconds left, so I want to hear what these are. What are you transforming these into?
So I will
What?
transfer this to a Chinese coin, like a traditional coin. I will make a square inside of it.
Okay.
So it will be an Oreo coin.
An Oreo coin. I love it, so it becomes currency. Instead of something you eat, we can actually trade, and I love it. Okay, so it's a coin. What else could it be?
Currency was mine.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
well, you've got two separate pieces there, so.
I use them as like teaching moon phases.
Okay, phases of the moon. Great, great. What about you all?
I think we missed this objective.
What did you
We
transfer?
went, we got like wicked philosophical with it.
That's
We
okay.
said that we were gonna use the Oreos as like a truce offering to the opposite debate team,
Okay,
and
well,
as a
you're
sign of
gonna use.
respect for them.
Well, that's kind of like okay, sort of like currency
Yeah,
of
drop the ball.
goodwill. Okay, what about over here? Oh, that's neat. What is it? You gotta see this.
all I did was take the stuff out of the middle.
She took the cream out, but she made like a stand. What's it for?
To hold your cell phone or your pen or
Oh, I
something.
love
when
it.
you're
Or a
doing your work.
picture, like when you're in
Yes.
class.
Kind of
Oh,
holder.
great. Okay, definitely new purpose. What about this one? What are
Ours
these?
is a face mask, so you can either like milk it up and have a wet
Like
face
a
mask,
milk
or
Oh,
you
the
can just
cream.
crunch it and have your exfoliation.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Fabulous. It's a beauty accessory. What?
This is a sundial.
Okay, we could take it outside and the cream might get a little interesting in the sun, but it could be really fun. Love it. What else? Oh, what's this?
I don't know. I think halfway a bridge.
It looks like a bridge or it looks like a
Yeah.
toy of some sort.
I like toys. That's
What
a
about
toy.
these?
Mine came broken. So
Right.
I decided to make it either into like a jigsaw puzzle or maybe it could be like a treasure map.
Okay, awesome. I've seen earrings. I've seen somebody who made a stand for their glasses, kind of like yours. But you all did a really good job with this. The point here is that there's a difference between change and transformation, and we need to call what's happening in education by its true name, which is transformation. We are changing the purpose of what education is supposed to do for people. If you think about the purpose of educating students in the 20th century, we were educating students for an agrarian society or for a factory society, or we were not educating them for the type of world they live in today. We need to transform our purpose, so we need to call it what it is. Change is an event. It's something that happens. Like, you might change jobs, change offices, you might move, that's a change. Those are things that they're events, but they have a very clear sort of time duration, and change really implies that you're going to do something different, but not necessarily change a purpose. Transformation, on the other hand, is a whole process. It's a psychological process. It has phases, and it's not something that happens quickly. It happens over time. There are phases of this process. You have to end what you used to do, which for some people is really hard. It's really hard to let go of the teaching strategies they used forever. Some of you, unfortunately, had teachers in your own teaching life as a kid that had a file cabinet, and in September they opened it to the September file and they pulled out whatever they'd done the same way for the last 10 years. And for them, dumping the file cabinet is a very hard thing to do because that's their comfort zone. There's also then a neutral zone in the middle of a transformation where you're not still doing the old things, you've let go of those, but now you're just sort of getting yourself psyched up to start doing new things. And that's really where we need to do this together. I love this photo. It's another personal picture of mine. A few years ago, my cousin Alex, who is with has the black umbrella, went to Rome to study for a year. And while she was there, they had the first measurable snowfall in about 50 years. And she sent this picture to me, and it spoke volumes because I was excited to see her and see that she was experiencing snow there. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, this is really reflective of something important for us as people who work with students, which is that it is not that situation in Rome, that historic snowfall, didn't happen because of one snowflake. It happened because of a lot of snowflakes working together. They'd had spits of snow before, but it was never measurable. It only became measurable when each individual snowflake formed together and there were enough of them collectively to make this really cool event happen. And it's the same thing when it comes to developing that capacity in a school for people to be ready to roll. So, are you a growth mindset educator? Are you willing to take risks? Are you willing to step out of the box? Are you willing to say, I don't know how to do some things? Are you willing to think differently about what your capacity for change is? Really important. I would ask you, some people think that they don't have to change their practice. They can just wait it out. I think this is a really bad strategy. It's not good for kids and it's not good for us. We need to embrace different things and new things. We need to have a growth mindset. So I want you to get in the zone. In the book, we talk about the 3 zones for kids, that you can be in your comfort zone, your learning zone, or your danger zone. Your comfort zone is where things are too easy and comfortable for you. You might be happy there, but you're not really growing or challenging yourself. Your danger zone is where you're in over your head and you're panicking, and you can tell that this is not an effective growth. You're not growing. You grow in the learning zone. It's somewhere in the middle. So you need to sort of find what your zone is and grow from there. I told you I've had a couple spine surgeries, and I'm really fortunate that I can do most things. I can't jump on trampolines, I can't ski, I can't do things that would encourage me to fall down. Because in every life a little fall must happen, but my life is supposed to have less of it than most people. However, I learned a lot about my lower back from having a couple back surgeries, and so I have these vertebrae pieces. I have a set of them at my house on my desk, and I have a set of them at work on my desk. And they're good reminders for me, because I think educators are always saying we need a lighter load. I think we need a stronger back, because I think kids need us to be stronger. And when I look at these, I see a couple things. I see the fact that your vertebrae are delicate. I can tell you mine are. However, when they fit together properly, which they do, they're very strong. So when they're collaborative, they're stronger than when they're on their own. very much like those of us who work with children. So we might be fragile, but we're strong and tough. And we need to think about how we build our strength to carry the load that we need to for kids. So this metaphor for me, the idea of thinking about myself in connection to these vertebrae that mean so much to me and that I have to take care of. Seeing these on my desk every day reminds me to do a few things. It reminds me to always do my exercises, reminds me how to stay strong. It reminds me to be grateful that I can walk and dance and do things that everyone else can do. But it also reminds me of the important work that we have to do for kids. And so I share that with you because I'm always available if you need something. And this is how you get in touch with me. My Twitter handle is Meg Vertebrae. My email is Meg Vertebrae. You can email me, ask questions, follow me on Twitter, because I'm always tweeting things about mindset, the brain, sometimes mindset and coaching, because that's really what my passion is. I love it. I love working with students. I love working with sports teams. And I've really enjoyed being here with you all. So thanks for letting me come.